Hello and welcome to a Layer 7 webinar in partnership with ChallengePost. This webinar is entitled Open APIs plus Software Competitions equal Innovative and Creative Solutions. Thank you all for joining today. Hopefully everything's working for the audio and screen. If you have any issues, please feel free to use the chat window. My name is Alex Gaber. I'm an API evangelist with Layer 7 Technologies. With us today is Brandon Kessler, CEO and founder of ChallengePost, an online competition challenge platform. Just a little bit of housekeeping here as we get started. If you have any questions, again, please use the chat window in the WebEx interface, and we are monitoring that, so we'll respond to those fairly quickly. And just please let us know if you have any technical issues or anything. Feel free to let us know, and we're happy to answer any questions that you ask us. All the slides from today's presentation will be posted online afterwards, and we will also post a recording of this webinar for viewing later or sending to your colleagues who were not able to attend live. The hashtag for the current webinar is L7webinar, so please feel free to tweet out if you have any interesting comments that you'd like to share through Twitter. You can also follow us on Twitter. You can see there the Layer 7 Twitter account as well as ChallengePost. Myself is Intellex, and B. Kessler is Brandon's Twitter account. So going ahead and getting started now. So again, thank you for joining. We'll be starting right now with the webinar. So first I want to just give some quick background for anyone who's joining what Layer 7 does and why we're here today. So Layer 7 provides API infrastructure for large enterprises and government across the globe. We provide a gateway that controls and monitors the use of the APIs. We provide an identity broker that provides things like single sign-on across your enterprise for usage of those APIs. We have a service manager to monitor those APIs. And lastly, most importantly, we have an API developer portal. What that portal does is let you expose those APIs and give developers, whether they are internal to your company, with partners that you work closely with, or for external third-party developers, but giving any or all of those developers access to your APIs and letting them use them and integrate them into your applications. So here at Layer 7, I work with many of these companies here to help them prove out an API platform strategy and build an ecosystem around those APIs, whatever that may mean, whether it is for internal use or external, but defining that and taking that strategy to market for their APIs, where Layer 7 has provided the technical infrastructure. We help them get those APIs outwardly exposed and consumed by other partners and developers. So what we do at Layer 7 is help our customers build ecosystems around their APIs. First, we have our API Academy that helps you make those APIs easy to use, consumable by developers, and very accessible. We have experts as part of our staff that help architect your APIs and make them based on best practices that are easy for developers to integrate into their applications, whether it be web integration projects or whether it be mobile applications. We have architects that help our customers build out those APIs based on industry best practices. The next, we help provide our customers with a developer access portal. What that developer portal does is lets developers, whether they are internal to your company, part of partners you work closely with, or third-party external developers, get access to those APIs, but to whatever degree of access that you want to provide them to. If you want to give internal developers greater levels of access and external developers a more restricted level of access, we can easily do that through our portal, but also providing other things through that portal, such as an API Explorer, or API documentation, API code samples. We help you build up that portal to be one where developers come and are immediately engaged and can get access to your APIs to build those APIs integrated into their applications. Next, we help our customers define success metrics and goals for their API platform. Often those goals may just be internal integrations, but more and more we're helping our customers define outwardly facing API success metrics, whether it's the number of API calls per day or it's the number of apps built on their APIs. We're helping them gauge and measure what success means to them and to their API platform. We do help promote APIs through social media, but more importantly, we help our customers facilitate participation in things like hackathons and online challenges. We can bring our customers to hackathons as a co-sponsor where we provide a prize based on usage of their API in that hackathon. But we've had some different results with those hackathons, and different customers of ours seek different results that may or may not see success through physical hackathons that have become so popularized through mainstream media lately and their overall success at many different companies. So now we're looking at online challenges as the next wave. But other problems that we've encountered with those hackathons are often things like fixed time constraints. Because it's maybe a hackathon that's only over 1 or 2 days, obviously the quality of code and the quality of solution that gets produced is going to reflect the amount of time committed to that. Even if there's a major sprint and plenty of Red Bull and energy there in the hackathon, often those solutions are baling wire and duct tape put together quickly to achieve a goal and build a solution, but maybe not following often the best practices. And we often attribute those weaknesses to those apps to the time constraints around them. The next thing is cash rewards. Often we see these hackathons sometimes with prizes of $20,000 or a trip to Europe from America. Those kinds of cash rewards are great to incentivize participation in the hackathons, but then they can also create mixed results based on professional hackers who come to hackathons and simply show up just to get the cash prize, but have no real interest in the platform long term. So those cash rewards can provide mixed results to your API platform. Often these hackathons are also in a location of an office building or a business setting. This will greatly limit who can actually attend. That's why we see a lot of hackathons in Silicon Valley. Now they're just starting to appear across the globe, but it's really who is local, who can attend, and that's the limitation of the hackathons. You're not going to really be able to appeal to a larger global community of developers due to physical, geographical constraints there. And then lastly, one other thing we've seen is connections and networking at hackathons. By being offline, we may meet and shake hands with people, but often you meet 100 people over the course of 24 hours and you fail to get all of their LinkedIn information. You fail to get their Twitter account, and you say, who is that interesting person that I talked about, that great Ruby framework with, and I want to learn more, or that mobile development framework that looks so cool. Who was that person? What was it? And we see with online challenges the ability to much more easily create a long-term connection using online social media between the participants and often create more lasting and in-depth relationships between those people. So now that I've kind of explained to you what Layer 7 does and how we've helped our clients with these things, this is kind of going to segue now to what we are doing now as the next step beyond the hackathon. What is the next thing that helps these customers get those apps from scrappy prototype to production-grade enterprise application? And we're seeing a lot of success with online challenges. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and hand over presentation controls here to Brandon Kessler. He's the founder and CEO of ChallengePost. Brandon.
Thanks very much, Alex. Let me get started here on the slides. Okay. Can you see them all?
Yeah.
Great. So wonderful. So thanks a lot. We're delighted to be working with Layer 7. I'm Brandon. I'm CEO and founder of ChallengePost. We are based in New York City. We have 16 employees just dedicated to creating, powering, and managing competitions. Most of those competitions are software-based, and I'm excited to tell you about the value proposition of a challenge, how to make a compelling challenge, a little bit more on how they compare to or differ from hackathons, and a little more about our company as well. So let's dive right in. So why do a challenge? What is a challenge? Well, software challenges often are about driving developer awareness. And one of the key things that you get from them is innovation. So you get apps and you get platform enhancement. So you may have APIs, you may have SDKs, but unless people are using them, the value isn't there. So one of the key reasons for creating a competition using a software platform or an API as ingredients inside of that competition is innovation. So you get apps and you extend the value of your platform because you have additional people using it, and I'm sure you all know this part. You also can grow your developer ecosystem, so developers, as you probably know, can become partners. Not only can they create software using your APIs, but also go on and do other things along with you, give you valuable feedback, tell others about them, and continue to grow and strengthen your platform. So people want to attract developers, and competitions are a primary means of doing that. You're reaching new people for the most part, not just the same old people, but new developers out there that are looking for opportunities, bring them into your system. There's a superior return on investment with competitions. We've seen this time and time again, and we work with everybody from, we're the federal government's competition platform for all of their federal agencies, down to working with startups. And there is a tremendous value because the value of the submissions created is far greater than the prize amount that you put up. And we'll talk a little bit more about why that is, but it's principally because developers aren't just doing this for the money. And social rewards are incredibly important. And money is actually an inefficient payment system if you just look at it alone for developers. They're not just interested in the dollars, and therefore they want to make stuff that matters. And that stuff that gets made using your API is a greater investment that they're putting into it than whatever you're putting into it from a prize amount. And we have hard numbers around this, and it's the kind of thing that you can use to excite other people within your company and other executives because the dollars add up at the end of the day. And then branding and awareness. Competitions galvanize the public. They excite the public. They appeal to the competitive spirit, and people like to tell others about them. You can win something. It's exciting. And so you get awareness and branding for your product itself, not just the API, but whatever the API is, whatever the product is that you have an API for, because you're getting developers that find out about you, and then they're telling their friends, and we have public voting. So their friends can then learn not just about your API, but about the actual product or company and what the purpose of that is. And your team as well. It really does elevate. We've seen time and time again, people that are working on these, it elevates their ability within companies and outside of the company to create success. So that's what a challenge, that's why people should run challenges in our opinion. Now I'd love to just briefly tell you about us and our platform. So there are three parts to our business. The first is the platform. It's easy to use. All we do is competitions, so we're constantly improving it, the user experience for both the challenge managers and for the participants. And that includes people that are voting and just following the challenge and sharing it, but it also includes the software developers that are entering the competition. We have public voting. Any of you that have run a competition before probably know that, excuse my French, it's a real pain in the ass. It just can be. Trying to put your own competition up is on your own website or on a blog or some kind of WordPress thing is hard. If you can't really have public voting, so we have public voting, and that allows anybody to, pick their favorites. And then we have expert judging, because public voting is really just there for awareness. It doesn't always get at who's the best or what's the best app. It gets at who has the most friends. And we like public voting because it drives awareness and that branding and engagement that I was talking about before. But expert judging is another thing that's built into our platform, so you can have as many judges as you want. They rate each submission by an unlimited number of criteria from a scale of 1 to 5. Reminders go out to judges. You can keep track of who's accepted their invitation and who's done what. It really makes your life easier so that you don't have to become a full-time competition manager. Of course, they're also sharing, and there's public recognition for the winners. So normally, a competition goes up. You get your same old people that you emailed or that are already part of your ecosystem. You announce the winner on a blog, and it comes down, not on our platform. There's a marketplace of people solving problems every day, and so developers want to be part of that, and they get recognition in perpetuity for participating in your competition. Second is services. We help put together the competition. We help create it, manage it, market it, promote it. That's optional. Some of our clients run them themselves frequently, and others want us to do the heavy lifting. but we are confident that we know as much or more than anybody about the ins and outs of competitions, and what do you do if it's an iPhone app but it's not yet on the App Store, and which versions of Android should be supported in a competition, and on and on and on, different legal questions. We can help with that stuff. And then lastly, the network of over 300,000 registered developers and technology enthusiasts who want to learn about new opportunities and participate in them, and that's a key asset. So moving on, in terms of clients we work with, this is just a small bit, but Samsung and Thomson Reuters and Evernote and Elsevier and others. And then on the government side, we are the government-wide competition platform for the federal government. So we work with every federal agency and many other cities, and the First Lady and World Bank and others. So let's get into why you're probably here, which is not just why software competition can help grow your developer ecosystem, drive apps and drive developers, but how to do it and where it fits in. So you likely already have tools, APIs, software developer kits, data, etc., that are there for developers. Maybe not all of you have external-facing APIs, but are maybe considering that. And that's obviously very important in order to run a software competition. There needs to be something that's an ingredient that developers can use to make. Next up is you probably have a portal, and as Alex just described, I know Layer 7 supports portals as well. You likely provide some kind of support for developers. And lastly, outreach. You may attend events and conferences, you may host hackathons, and you may or are potentially considering creating competitions. This is where we fit in, or this is where software competitions fit in, is reaching new people that don't already know about you or already haven't learned about your APIs. And when it comes to outreach, we believe it's all about making a challenge compelling. And here's where I want to get into the meat of how to run a software competition, how to run a well-run software competition. So first, we recommend that you make the competition meaningful. Developers don't just want a one-night stand. They don't just want, hey, create apps using our API, thanks, $5,000. They want to know why it matters. As you know, developers are incredibly in demand. They are highly paid. They have nearly unlimited number of opportunities of side projects that they can work on, either for business or hackathons or side projects, etc. And so cutting through the clutter is important, and developers want to make an impact. So understanding what the competition is about is important. So instead of it just being a competition to use Samsung's APIs, for example, it's a competition to free the television and from its constraints, so that you don't just have one input and one pipe for content, but that developers can play a role. Or instead of just using a list of data sets from the city of New York, it's the NYC Big Apps competition, where developers can improve New York, or the MTA competition, where you can improve ridership for 16 million daily riders. So you want to get at the impact of the competition, what it is that developers are impacting or will impact with their successful software apps, and that needs to be highlighted on the competition all the way throughout. The second is less about us and more about the sponsor of the competition, which is the API and SDK documentation. We have had clients with 1,000 pages of documents for their APIs that is not reasonable for new developers to come in and in a 3 or 4 month period be able to digest the APIs and SDKs and then build something impactful. So making them clear, making them simple and user-friendly. They don't need to be perfect, but there just needs to be an eye to being able to have it be clear, and if there are questions, definitely being able to answer them and being available and around to answer them. The website content and layout is important. We study bounce rate of people who come to competitions and leave, and it's important that the value proposition, the ones that we have talked about earlier in the webinar, and also this first bullet point about impactful and meaningful competitions, that needs to be front and center on the actual challenge. The rules need to be clear. For those of you that don't know, competitions, you're following promotion law, and lawyers generally need to be involved. And it's important not to disadvantage people by changing the rules midstream or doing something that could disadvantage one entrant over another because they could have a legal claim. So making sure that the rules are right are important. Of course, we've done this for several hundreds of challenges, but whether you work with us or yourself or your own attorney or others, it's important to get the rules right. Prizes, and I'll talk next about sort of the proper structures and incentives, but in general, the prizes need to be set. And depending on the type of prize, it really depends on each type of prize is going to drive a different type of participant. So Alex earlier mentioned that some people may show up at hackathons that are just looking to make some extra dough that weekend, and they do this all the time. We see that as unlikely in the competitions that we power, although we do see that in hackathons, because you have to build something over 3 or 4 months, not just in a day. But if you have high dollar amount prizes, you're going to attract more people that are interested in money, and that could be businesses, et cetera. And if you have a small dollar amount, you must have something else to make up for it, like the impact or some non-financial prizes around it. So there's a menu item of prizes, I'll talk a little bit more about that later, that need to be decided upon and also need to be clear on the website. Dates, of course, need to be clear and fair, and there needs to be enough time for people to participate. We recommend 3 months minimum. 3 to 4 months is a good period of time, but it does depend on the competition. We've done them in 6 weeks. We've done them in over a year for submission period time. It does depend on what's being built and what's being asked, but in general, 3 to 4 months is a good period of time. And then resources is super important. Giving developers the resources they need to participate in this competition. So I mentioned in the bullet point above APIs and SDK documentation, but that's just technical documentation. If the competition has some sort of angle or you're working to solve a problem or it's a clean tech thing or whatever it is, you also want to have some kind of resources around the topic that could be helpful and give people ideas. You may hear people complain that when cities have competitions, you get a lot of restaurant health inspection submissions that let you find out whether a restaurant is clean or not. Well, that's because developers eat every day, but maybe they don't dive in deep to the topic of education or health as it relates to the city, which is why it's really important in those cases that resources be given around the topic. So not just the API, but what's this purpose, and can you give some context? Can you have an event and tape it and show it on the web, on the competition website where topic experts are explaining it, or a webinar or something else like that to give people resources so that these developers have an idea what to do. Structure and incentives. And I did talk about this earlier. I want to dive in a little deeper about prizes. It also speaks to how much money you need to come up with, you as a company, if you want to do this. Developers are motivated by more than just money. People are. They're motivated by status and recognition and intellectual stimulation and the competitive spirit and altruism and the satisfaction of creating something and seeing its impact in the world. And money, but all of those things, and everybody has their own menu item. And so obviously if developers were just interested in money, they would all go work at a big bank, but they're not. They want to make something impactful. So you want to think about what's our menu item of prizes. Can we do non-financial prizes as well? Like, can the winners go up not just on our website, but maybe we have an ad campaign that we run on a bunch of websites. Can we put their picture in? We here at ChallengePost have a big challenge with the MTA. They run all the buses and subways in New York, and right now you can see the winning apps on all the subways. So they were able to contribute that as a prize. We've had billboards in Times Square because they happen to own one. It just depends. They don't all have to be that huge. They could just be that you get to fly to the company and meet a CEO and have a business opportunity there. There are other non-financial prizes where we would encourage you to think about those because those matter. And then depending on which prizes you pick, you can then kind of get a sense for who might enter. And because as I said, different entrants are going to have that different menu item of what motivates them. But nevertheless, you still want to know, I'm sure, how much dollars is good for a minimum. Well, if it's like under $1,000, like just make it an iPad or something that or like a MacBook Air, something that has kind of a greater perceived value than the dollar amount. We do encourage people, you know, 10,000 and up, but it really does depend, and we need to know a little more about the competition in order to give better advice on this. I just would say one thing, which is it's not just about the total dollar amount. You have to split it up. So if you want a first, second, third prize, maybe some honorable mentions, and you have 10K, then you're probably not going to be able to give more than like 5K to the winner, and you need to think, well, what's the theory here? You know, what's the calculus? What's the expected value of somebody spending 3 or 4 months and at the end of the day making $5 grand? So those are the types of inputs that should go into you thinking about prizes. Of course, we help with this here, but that's a different story. Lastly, outreach. So marketing a competition is extremely important. You will have a list of developers you're already working with. We at ChallengePost have an enormous list of developers who are interested in impactful opportunities. But beyond that, getting out there, this is guerrilla marketing. It's going to meetups, it's going to hackathons, it's handing out flyers, it's doing one-on-one. I don't know if my slides just went away, but all of a sudden something happened. Well, hopefully now you can see the screen. So it's one-on-one outreach. We have contacts with university professors, and we ask them to blast their students about all of these opportunities. So this is both online, offline, in person. This includes media. This includes bloggers, et cetera. The more you can get the word out, the better. And for the last slide, hackathons versus challenges. Alex spoke to this earlier, so I'm just going to speak for a minute about this. But we love hackathons. We think they are awesome. The positives are that you can network in person. They're fun. They're local. You can meet people there. But on the flip side, the apps and submissions are generally not as sustainable or complete. There's only so much you can make in a weekend or a day. And so we encourage hackathons to be run underneath an overall competition. So you can run a competition that's going to last 3 months. Really takes 5 or 6 months if you count setup and judging and voting and winner announce and all that. But throughout that 5-6 month period, you can have a hackathon where people can meet in person and then also work on their apps some more and submit it into the larger competition where they're more invested. And challenges don't have that sort of, they can be fun, but they're not as local, and it's not as much about networking as a hackathon does. That's on the downside. On the positive side, you have working software applications that are submitted. Otherwise, they're not eligible. They have to work. They can be national or global. So it's not just the people who attended and who are willing to sleep, you know, there on the floor, but it's everybody in the world. And as I said, they're great in combination with hackathons. So that's it for what we think the value of challenges are and what are some of the principles behind running the best ones. And I think from here, this is my contact information. It's brandon@challengepost.com. My address is here, and you can also reach us through challengepost.com. And very much look forward to answering any questions or seeing how I can help further. Thanks very much, and thanks so much to Layer 7.
There were a couple questions. If we could just maybe look at some examples of challenges that you've run, Brandon, that were really successful, maybe some bigger ones, and just some quick examples that you could point to here. If you could pull up a website, that'd be great, or maybe just mention a few that have been really successful.
First of all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. And I just wanted, before I go on and answer these questions, I just want to make sure you were able to see all of my slides and hear me up until the end, correct?
Correct. Yeah, it looks like
okay,
just at the end, our other host dropped off, and that's what caused the issue there. So,
no problem. Well, that's great news. That's great news. I'm glad I wasn't speaking to the ether for the last 20 minutes. So fantastic. Okay, so forgive me for not hearing the entire conversation, but your question. But from what I understand, you were asking about specific challenges that may have been successful and potentially show some examples on the web. Is that correct?
Yes, that was just a question that came through. Yeah.
Sure. So what I think I'm going to do is not show it on the web because I don't want to screw anything up here, but what I will do is definitely answer them verbally if that's okay, and I can read some of the URLs, and you can also go to challengepost.com, click on Discover, and then go around and and check with them. So, okay, great. So there are a lot of successful ones. We have several successful competitions with Samsung. One of them is to create software apps to improve their interactive line of television. So, for example, they have APIs and SDKs, and they want people to create apps. This is all public information. Of course, I would never speak about anything that weren't public. They want people to create apps for their televisions to distinguish them, their wonderful line of interactive televisions. So there were basically 2 or 3 apps when we first started working with them. We helped create the challenge, power, manage, and promote it, and they now have several hundred apps over 2 years, and their interactive televisions have been written up in the press as having the most number of apps, and actually, despite Google's and Apple's foray into this territory, it's been the most successful. And we also now work with them on their mobile phones around and driving Android apps into their developer ecosystem. On New York City, we're very proud. One of the first competitions we powered, and what I forgot to mention is how long we've been around and how many competitions we powered. We launched in mid-2009, in June of 2009. We now have over 300,000 registered users who are developers and technology enthusiasts, and we've powered, at this point, over 300 competitions. With New York City, they had data. As part of their open data initiative, they wanted to be transparent and put out data about everything from restaurant health inspections to Wi-Fi hotspots to traffic to other stuff. And they wanted developers to help them turn that data, which was buried on some computers, turn that data into something useful for New Yorkers. And every year, $4 to $5 million in software is created in exchange for between $20,000 and $50,000 in prize money. So we're talking like a 200x return on investment for New York City. Now, granted, they don't take ownership of all of those apps, but they're not looking to. They are not looking to take ownership. They're looking to build their ecosystem. So that is why those are a couple examples. We also we're delighted to work with companies like Evernote and Infusionsoft, and I can list some other examples if you have specific questions as well. So I hope that was a sufficient answer. Happy to answer further questions.
Yeah, I think there was, there's one other question. It was around, the question is, how do you justify ROI for a challenge? So maybe if you could kind of elaborate on how ChallengePost is, and I know you do, kind of define the ROI. Sure. What are success metrics? Are people looking for, just traffic on their APIs? Or are they looking for actual apps? And how have you defined that ROI?
Definitely. So usually it depends. Different companies or sponsors of competitions want different things. Usually they want to drive new apps and new developers into their ecosystem. Those are generally some of the key metrics. And then a third one could just be overall awareness of the product or API, et cetera. And we can look at that by visitors to the site and press, et cetera. We have a big challenge with the Royal Canadian Mint, to give another example, for their Mint chip currency. It's the first digital currency from a government agency or a government-affiliated agency, and it was #1 on the Hacker News for like 3 days, and people are going nuts about it. We get tons of press for those, so that's on the awareness front. But as to the first two, new developers into your ecosystem and new apps into your ecosystem. And then furthermore, you can put a value on them. So it is a little hard to put a value on them, but I can give you some numbers that we've looked at in the past. One comes from a guy named Vivek Kundra, who was the CTO for the United States, and he came up with a metric of $50,000 per app. It's about what a corporation or government agency spends on an individual app. So that's just one metric. You could take the number of apps and multiply it by 50K. It's not 100% accurate because some will be valued a lot more and some will clearly be a lot less. But another one is the private markets. So every year in our challenges in New York City, for example, and we work with many cities and states and corporations, people go on to create businesses, and those get valued on the private market when they get funding at several millions of dollars. So not just that $4 to $5 million in software that I was talking about for all the apps created, but usually 1 or 2 come out of there that end up being valued at 10 or 15 or $20 million. And we have these success stories with just about every challenge we power, where new apps get created, new teams get formed, they go on and get funding, either from the investors who were judges for the competition or just as a result of this increased awareness that they get. So having a breakout app built on your API is also extremely valuable. So that's how I would sum it up. Numbers of apps, numbers of developers, a value on those apps, which can come either from what's the cost of you to build your own, not to mention that you probably wouldn't have had that idea on your own, but if you did have the idea, what's the cost to build those apps that are created, and then what do some of the breakout ones get valued at on the private markets, which is a very fair way to value that kind of return on investment. And then you offset that, or you compare that to whatever prize money you put up, plus if you hire somebody to power or run the competition, what that fee is as well. When it comes to awareness, we think that could be many millions of dollars on top of that. Just depends on how that gets out there. But that's a little harder to value when you talk about tens of thousands of tweets and Facebook shares, et cetera.
Okay, great. It looks like there's one other small question here, or not small, but last question, which is, let me read this here. Oh, okay. So this kind of question is about, recruiting. Oftentimes, I think, Brandon and I, when I've been to hackathons, I see, sometimes you see recruiters there, and they're recruiting heavily. How have you seen that permeate into the space of online challenges? Do companies who run challenges ever see it as a recruiting effort as well, to bring on talent to their company and offer jobs to the successful winners? I know you mentioned some of the soft rewards beyond prizes, like a meeting with the CEO, but how often have you seen challenges that include, best winner is offered a job here?
It definitely can happen. But if you think about it, there's kind of 2 opposing purposes. One purpose could be, hey, we want real people to create real companies that use our APIs and go on and do awesome things. And the flip side of that, in terms of the question, is we want people to kind of create side projects so that we can hire them ourselves to do something else potentially. So I think there's a somewhat of a conflicting goal there, but they don't really conflict, and that speaks to the first question about what's the ROI, but they also don't conflict with reality. So let me explain what that means. If your ROI is or if what you're trying to drive, those metrics are extremely clear, then we just want developers and apps, and we want sustainable apps that go on and increase the value of our platform, then any kind of recruiting thing that happens is a bonus and kind of a side thing. And you, the competition, and whoever you hire, if you do, who works on that, would be focused on that primarily. If it's, hey, the primary goal here is to recruit, then sure, that could absolutely be the primary goal, and in which case the challenge should probably more be more of something that provides impact, maybe supporting city, maybe supporting a good cause, maybe kind of a fun type of a competition where you're trying to drive more side projects than you are actual sustainable businesses. And in that case, you could definitely meet people. And nearly every challenge, the developers meet the companies and do something together, whether it's, incorporating their app, whether it's hiring them, and we see people getting hired frequently as well, et cetera. And then lastly, I would say sometimes they can both happen at the same time. So maybe the goal is, growing your developer ecosystem, getting developers, getting apps, and enhancing the value of your overall platform through your APIs. But given that, as I said, software developers have a million opportunities, some of them just want to work on something interesting over the course of a few months, and they're not interested in quitting their other job to do this thing full time, then those kinds of people might be ripe to talk to. So we would never promise, hey, this is your first line of recruiting. It's more of something that can come out of it.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Well, I don't have any other questions. If anyone else did have any questions, please jump in now in the chat. Otherwise, we'll start wrapping this up. So let's see here.
And I would just say, this is Brandon, in terms of that first question about other examples, we do have a lot of successful examples that we'd love to discuss. We also have, if you click on the For Organizations section of our site, there's case studies that you can look at. And we are here anytime to send as many specific examples as you like.
Right, perfect. And as we mentioned, Layer 7 and ChallengePost are partners. So we do work together and can facilitate. If you're an existing Layer 7 API customer, we'd be happy to introduce you to the ChallengePost team and help you craft the challenge, and vice versa. If you're looking to run a challenge but need some better API infrastructure before doing so, obviously we'd be happy to help you at Layer 7. So I think we'll go ahead and wrap things up here. Brandon, do you have any last final comments?
No, just thanks very much, and it's Brandon at ChallengePost. Of course, get in touch with Alex, and we'd be delighted to talk to you more. We're also happy to just give advice. It's not, if you have some basic questions, we're happy to help.
Right. Yeah, and I think the overall concept here is that we look at the holistic approach to developer ecosystems, from the depth of your technical infrastructure, and having all your APIs secured and functional and scalable, all the way through to exposing them through the portal, to then promoting them and getting tangible results through things like ChallengePost competitions. That's kind of the goal here, is to really take that approach and look at your API platform as a company strategy, a company product that everyone needs to get behind, and it's a real way to get these to attack the app economy and to get these kinds of apps built for you and with your partners and within your company. So with that, I'd like to conclude and say thank you to everyone who joined today. It's been a really good webinar. Thank you very much, Brandon, for an excellent presentation. And again, feel free to reach out to any of us if you need. Oh, it looks like we had one more question here.
Great, great.
Sorry about that.
Not at all.
Oh, okay. Let's actually field this really quick. Sorry. It's what is your opinion of geography? With limited resources, do you want to focus on Silicon Valley, or how do you approach elsewhere? And maybe, Brandon, you can touch on really quickly then just promotion of the challenges, how you do that. If it is, as you mentioned, guerrilla marketing, going to the hackathons and telling developers there about your online challenge, other promotion efforts related to geography.
Sure. I would make it US. So we're talking less about a hackathon here and more about competition, online competition, which is what we power here at ChallengePost. We recommend that you do it nationwide, so it certainly can't hurt. You're not going to get people in every state, but people do share stuff on social networks, and clearly that's if you're running it yourself. Obviously, we and others have big networks around the world that we can push out to. But no, I would definitely recommend, if you're going to run an online competition, make it for the U.S. at a minimum. Adding additional countries does bring some overhead because there are different rules for different countries. Different organizations have different views about whether that matters. Most organizations do want it to be compliant legally in every country, and we here at ChallengePost always insist that it be if we are to be involved. So that means making sure that a lawyer who knows about international competition law is reviewing them before launching in other countries. That includes Canada, by the way. You can't have a competition that's open in Quebec unless the rules are translated in French. So that's why you'll see a lot of competitions that are for U.S. and Canada but exclude Quebec. And don't get me started about Brazil or other countries. So that kind of stuff does matter. So to answer your question, I would make it U.S. only, have one set of U.S. rules, which is definitely easy to do, and maybe add North America but subtract Quebec. Please, I hope nobody is offended by that. This is if the budget is small, and start there.
Yeah, and I think that also, just to add a comment there, I think it really speaks, when you are limited in budget and feeling limited by geography, an online challenge is a great approach because, at least you can blanket the entire country of the U.S. versus just a single city or geographical location. And that's something that we've seen at Layer 7 with our customers is how do we get across the country? New York's a hot spot now. Miami's getting developers. Austin, Texas, and why just stay in California? And that's really one of the reasons that we partnered with ChallengePost, is because our customers have needed to kind of get across the country, if not the globe, and that's what an online challenge can do. And sorry to go long here. I have one more question that I also had missed, which was, do you have measures of the quality of an API? Does the usage or popularity correlate to the quality measure? So I think we did kind of, I want to at least address the question. I think we kind of covered that in talking about success metrics for an API platform. And some of our customers at Layer 7 measure their success simply by the number of API calls. Some of them measure it by throughput at certain times of day if they're running event-based type APIs, functionality that, such as around a music concert or sporting event. They'll see an increase in usage, and that's how they measure it. Or they measure it based on the actual functional applications that are built. Some of our customers are doing integration projects with partners, so they measure it that way. But there are many different measurements, and I think that this question just kind of speaks to that. Every company's API platform does have different success metrics, and that's why we do what we do, and ChallengePost does what they do, is to help these enterprises achieve those metrics and first figure them out, and then do what they can to get there. So, okay. Brandon, any last comments? I think now we will wrap it up.
No, thank you all so much. Hope to speak with any of you that are interested in talking further.
Great, great. Okay, so thank you everyone again for joining. Thank you, Brandon and ChallengePost team. And we look forward to working with our customers to help them promote their API platforms through competitions. And please feel free to get in touch with us. And thank you again on behalf of Layer 7 and ChallengePost. Have a good day.